What are the specific challenges in this election, especially for each of the two parties and their candidates?
Democrats realized they had a problem in relating to religious people in 2004. They did a lot of organizing work after that. President Obama, before he was a candidate, gave what I still think is an extraordinary speech to Jim Wallace's Call to Renewal conference, where he laid out a very thoughtful, nuanced, and complex view of the relationship between religion and politics. And it was really trying to reach out to both believers and non-believers as part of this great American republic of ours. I think since his election, there was some emphasis taken off this. I think for a fair number of liberals and Democrats, they figured, all right, we solved this problem in '08. And I think there was some backing away from this work. And I think that that is something they're now trying to catch up on in the middle of a political campaign. I think on the Republican side, clearly evangelical conservatives and other kinds of religious conservatives played a major role in the Republican primaries, largely supporting candidates other than Mitt Romney, notably by giving a lot of support to Rick Santorum. It was fascinating that Rick Santorum, a Catholic, won the evangelical vote. Mitt Romney, a Mormon, tended to beat Santorum among Catholics, which shows how these differences are not clearly about religion, religious faith, or religious tenets. They're about a lot of other things as well. I think Romney can now count on evangelical conservatives are conservatives, political conservatives, and I think Mitt Romney will get the vast majority of their votes. I think there are two questions. One is, can Obama make some inroads in this group, as he did in '08, not large inroads, but some inroads, particularly among younger evangelicals? And what role does Mitt Romney's Mormon faith play in the election? Will there be some fall off in turnout? Are there some doubts among some evangelicals about voting for a Mormon? I don't think this will be a major factor. I think it'll be a minor factor, but it could play, I think, in states like swing states, like Nevada, possibly Arizona. I had an interview with Richard Land, the Southern Baptist, conservative leader of the Southern Baptists, who said his view is the tension between evangelicals and Mormons is greatest in areas where both groups bulk in significant numbers, which would suggest states in the West where Mormons are important. Utah and Idaho won't be in play, but Nevada and possibly Arizona will be in play. I think the other place where this will play in a substantial, where the other sort of group that I think everyone will be watching carefully is Catholics. Catholics voted for Obama in 2008. Catholics tend to vote for the winner. I don't think that's the Holy Spirit so much as the fact that Catholics are a very diverse group. A lot of Latino Catholics who provided President Obama with a substantial margin in 2008. I think the Latinos are likely to be there in substantial numbers again. Again, the question is the margins and the size of the turnout. Among African American Catholics, about 10% of the Catholic population will also be there again. Question will be what happens with white Catholics. What role with some of the agitation around the church's Fortnight for Freedom, which was far more popular among more conservative bishops than in other dioceses around the country. What role will the battle over contraception and healthcare play? Again, I think you're talking changes at the margins, but in elections, close elections especially, the margins matter. And I think Obama will be satisfied if he can simply hold his share of the white Catholic vote that he held in the last election.
The whole conflict with the bishops and the Obama administration over the contraception mandate and the so-called war against religion, what kind of resonance do you think that's had among voters in the grassroots, especially Catholic voters?
The question for me is whether this primarily had resonance among conservative Catholics who were already going to vote against Obama anyway. Because certainly, Obama got a significant share of the church-going Catholic vote the last time. A minority, but a significant share. And there are clearly a lot of moderates and liberals among church-going Catholics. I think for a lot of them, a lot of them had questions about the way the bishops went about this fight. Even, in my case, I initially agreed with the bishops that healthcare law needed to have some kind of out, some kind of accommodation. But I felt that once the Obama administration had responded to that, they had gone a significant way, and that sort of radical or strenuous opposition to the administration was not the appropriate way to go, because I think there's going to be further movement on that issue. So it will clearly mobilize conservative Catholics. The question is, are there Catholics at the margins who might be moved by this fight? And I think that's still up in the air. But again, if this campaign shifts a few points to Romney among both Latino Catholics and white Catholics, that's a couple of points of a very significant group in the electorate.
In the previous presidential election cycle, now President Obama talked a lot about some of these community concepts, and he talked a lot about "we are brother's keeper." He even used the words "common good." Has he backed off of that in this election cycle?
These sort of religious references or quasi-religious references still appear in his rhetoric. You still hear him talking about brothers keepers. Occasionally you hear him talking about the common good. I think he needs to address these issues again. And I think there was an understandable reluctance to talk in religious terms after the whole controversy around Jeremiah Wright. All of the talk about what is President Obama's religious affiliation really. He is a Christian, but there are all these sort of his opponents will float that he's a Muslim and all kinds of other things. I sometimes think that his attitude toward religion is that of Job, which is whenever it comes up, it somehow blows up in his face. Nonetheless, having said all that, I think he would do himself a service and do the country a service to try to re-engage these issues. Of course, now there's another risk, which is if he does talk in these terms, I'm sure his critics will say, aha, he's talking about this because Mitt Romney is a Mormon, and is there some secret effort to court anti-Mormon votes? And it just shows how polarized we are, that someone can't just come out there and give a thoughtful speech on religion without people having all kinds of dark suspicions about it. I think that's very unfortunate. All that said, he talks about it very well. I think it's something he's thought about a great deal, and I think it would. I'd like to see Mitt Romney give a speech on this too. And he made an effort at it in 2007, which didn't work well, and I think he may feel burned, Mitt Romney, by the failure of that effort in 2007. So there are all kinds of forces working against these candidates addressing these questions, and yet I think it's because religion is always there below the surface in our politics. I think it is better for us to address them out front and candidly.
How does Mitt Romney's Mormon faith influence his views about America?
The Mormons do have a strong sense of this. I mean, they are a faith homegrown. They came here. A lot of their religious places are in America, and all of their early history took place here. And so they do have an exceptional view of a very particular form of American exceptionalism is at the heart of Mormonism. Romney hasn't talked a great deal about this, and I think one can understand that because he's running to be the president of the United States, not as a Mormon president of the United States. And I don't think we ought to have, I don't want religious prejudice to enter into this campaign myself against Mormons or anyone else, or for that matter against Muslims. But I think it's going to be a real challenge for the media in the course of this election because, on the one hand, Mitt Romney would be the first Mormon president of the United States. It creates a kind of curiosity about Mormonism. A lot of Americans don't know much about Mormonism. I think there is a normal journalistic obligation to say, here is what the history of this faith, here's what Mormons believe. But I think there's also an obligation to tolerance and openness, not to have such stories appear to be part of some campaign saying that we shouldn't elect a Mormon president. That would be wrong. And I think that's a very tricky thing because I don't think we should duck the question of who are Mormons, but I also think the media don't want to be even indirectly engaged in something that looks like a political attack on Mormonism. And I pray that we'll do it right in this election, and I'm sure that whatever we do will be massively criticized, and probably in some cases justifiably so.